so sorry for the delay. Apparently, I did not have the link to enable me to present, so I'm sure now we are a go for the presentation. Right, my presentation is going to be focusing on the ways in which social media humor is used in the perpetuation of toxic racial differences. Just a little bit of background, just for you to have an idea of where I'm coming from and where I'm going. So as I was preparing this presentation, there's this song by the late Bob Marley that kept on playing at the back of my mind. That is Redemption Song. And I was particularly fixated on the line in which Bob Marley exhorts people to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, as none but thee shall free our minds. I am sure we can appreciate that the processes of from as far back as slavery, colonialism, and the neocolonialism that followed it was particularly violent on the dominated people, especially the people of color. And none more so did that violence take place than the psychological or mental violence that it did to the minds of the oppressed. There was also this video, the documentary about Malcolm X that was played on the stage for those of us who managed to see that one. I was actually particularly captivated by how Africans were said that they were forced to hate their own languages, their own culture, and their own selves, their own identities. And this is something that my presentation is going to be touching on, especially years, if not decades, after the people of color have attained their own independence. We might have gotten flag independence, we might have gotten political independence to some extent, but the question is...
Hugh, please, excuse me. Bring the screen down. Hello? We can't see your face. Bring the screen
You cannot
down.
See my face.
We can just see your forehead. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Oh, okay. It's better now. It's better now.
Much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I'm using my phone to make the presentation, so the moment it moves, I get out of the picture. So as I was saying, the presentation is about the mental psyche of the people of the people of color, especially after the process of colonization. As I was saying, we might have had the political independence, but the question is, are we mentally independent? That is, are we seeing ourselves as worthy people to compete on the same level as other races, especially the former colonizers? For some of us who are familiar with our history, we know that the colonized will always have a special relationship with their former colonial masters. So the question is, what sort of relationship is formed after the attainment of independence? Is that of animosity, or is it that of assimilation, whereby the former colonized wants to assimilate into the culture of the former colonized? I'll mobilize the popular saying, which is almost become cliche, that to be is to be like, and to be like is to be like the former former colonizer. So I'm going to present what is ostensibly a qualitative study that looked at the various discursive ways that people participate on social networking sites in the construction of black identities, especially vis-a-vis the white racial identity, which, as we are going to see as the presentation goes on, is seen as the ideal or hegemonic identity to which the people of color have to approximate or assimilate to be considered people who are worthy of their being. So in Zimbabwe's anecdotal interactive situations, there appears to be this quest for people to appear as white as possible as a measure of their own achievements or attainment. So someone who is rich or someone who appears to be educated or civilized in quotes is referred to as Murungu, which literally translates to white person, and someone who behaves or who has attitudes which are seen to be akin to those of the white person is said to be practicing churungu, or that is, they are acting in a manner that white people are expected to act. And this is actually something that is seen as being good, and something that is seen as what people should aspire to. Sorry. So in the context of Pan-Africanism, we can already discern that this is quite problematic in the sense that we are trying to look within, not to look outside. That is, we are trying to find pride in our own identities. We are trying to find pride in African cultures, its languages, its dances, its foods. Everything about culture is what about Africa or about the black identity is what we are trying to rally to take as a rallying point and use that as a unifier to fight against neocolonialism and to try to break the hegemonic hold of the West over Africa and African people, as well as other marginalized people of color around the world. So the social media has been lauded for offering spaces for people to rally against this hegemonic stranglehold of Western cultures or the white identity on African cultures. And notably, the hashtag Black Lives Matter has been cited in the literature as such a case in point, whereby the social media has been used as a rallying point for people of color to protest against the blatant inequalities that exist between the white and black identities, and try to at least have people find pride and to unite according to their own black identities. So that is the positive side. But there is also the negative side, where Milner suggests that what he refers to as the participation problematic, whereby instead of appropriating the openness and the democracy in terms of participation that is offered by the social networking sites, people use them to perpetuate these unequal relations of power between the races. I'm referring to cases whereby people of color, black people, who use social networking sites to to disparage their own culture, to disparage their own languages, to disparage their own values in favor of the Western values, which are seen as the ideal. So that is basically what my presentation is going to be looking at. That is the various discursive ways in which black people, would use humor in this particular instance to construct toxic identities that will, at the end of the day, end up promoting or perpetuating the hegemonic white race. So we need to understand the importance of humor as a social text in any given society. Humor is a text which would otherwise appear as banal, which would otherwise appear as lacking substance and serious. And this is actually reflected in how long academia had gone without putting it to academic rigor, because it was seen as a text that is not serious enough. But if we really want to look closely, humor is an instance of everyday talk whereby it is quite critical in the construction of everyday discourses that can be used in the weaving of the macro discourses, both micro and macro discourses that are found in any given society. And this humor is also an example of spreadable media, which can easily be shared among social networking sites. And as it gets spread amongst the social media, the notion of virality then comes into being, whereby we are taking texts that go viral on social networking sites, appear to gain traction on those on social media, and therefore become important pieces or raw materials to the weaving of everyday discourses in our societies. So at the end of the day, the role of humor in the construction of identity, especially collective black identities, cannot be overemphasized. It is something that is going on a regular basis. And as a matter of fact, we have got groups, especially be it on WhatsApp, that are especially dedicated for nothing else but the sharing of media. We have got sites on Facebook, as another example, which are dedicated for the sharing of humor. So we can understand the role that is played by humor in our everyday discourses. And we cannot overemphasize the role that those discourses can play in our construction of our racial identities. So the question is, what sort of identities are we constructing through this humor we are sharing on social networking sites? So I looked at humor that tried to discursively compare the black people's conceptualization of what Africa means to them and what it means to be African, that is vis-a-vis what is seen as the hegemonic white identity. So as a theoretical framework, I mobilized the theorization of Ndlovugacheni and Chambati's unequal racial power dynamics in the post-colony. And it is a theory that itself derives from Kijano's theorization of coloniality, which basically looks at unequal power relations between the marginalized black identities and other marginalized people vis-a-vis the hegemonic white identities. And I was particularly interested in the construct of coloniality of being, which argues that in the African context, for example, the African's identity and self-confidence has been denigrated for so long that it has created an inferiority complex and self-denigration tendencies in the citizens. So the question is, how does this inferiority complex and these self-denigration tendencies appear in everyday discourses that are used in people's interaction? And one way of gaining an appreciation of how this inferiority complex and self-denigration tendencies manifest in everyday language is through the appropriation of humor. Humor is a user-generated text. It is the people who are constructing this humor and trying to express their views insofar as the issues of race are concerned. So I will be looking at how this particular humor will tell us or will discursively construct the black people's conceptualization of what Africa means to them. I will also be looking at issues of what is perceived as technological incompetence or technological ineptitude in African people. And I will lastly look at issues of linguistic imperialism. And in all these cases, we appreciate that black people, through this humor, have a very low opinion of themselves, and we get the feeling that they would rather be more Western or be more white than being black. And as I have said earlier on, this has implications on what the Pan-African agenda is seeking to achieve. That is, we want to raise this consciousness about restoration of black identities, whereby black people would look inwardly at their own identities and see them as something that is worth uniting over, especially in this fight against neocolonialism. Because otherwise, if we do not appreciate the value of our own cultures, then we'll be susceptible to neocolonialism, and the Pan-African ideals will never be realized, and will always be a people who are continually looking to the West to define who we are and to give us a purpose. And with that, we will not be going anywhere. So, so maybe before I continue, let me just check if there are any issues arising from the or if there are any questions that are being asked before I continue. Okay, so no comments so far, so I will just continue. So the first point of the first point that I want to make about how humor can be self-deprecating insofar as black African identities are concerned is through the conceptualization of what Africa means to the people. So there is humor that engages people's conceptualizations or perceptions about the origins of the name Africa itself. And there is this motif of snot that is that pervades this kind of jokes that try to tell us the origins of the name Africa itself. For those who might want to be interested in issues of anthropology or such, this is almost akin to creation myths, which try to at least shed light on what is prioritized in any given society. That is how a particular people see themselves as a people originating, and how the nature of relationships are justified in any given society. So we all know that the white person or the colonizer came into Africa, purporting Africa to be a dark continent that was uncivilized, that was very barbaric, and that needed to be enlightened by the white person for it to at least develop or modernize. So the issue of development and modernization is something that is also going to crop up in the next point that I am going to make. But for now, as I was saying, there's this motif of snot that comes up in this humor that is in the humorous stories that try to at least explain, in quotes, the origins of the name Africa. So we have got two major strands of such humor. The first one is to do with how the white people came to this continent. They didn't know the name of the continent, and as they were asking this old lady and old men what the continent was about, what the name of the continent, sorry. So the old men did not understand the language, for it be the first encounter between the white and black identities. So the old men did not understand what the white people were asking them. So the wife also did not understand. So the wife was asking the husband what the people were inquiring from them. But as it was, there was a lot of mucus on the nose of the old lady. So the old man instructed the lady to wipe off the mucus from their nose. So the lady uses the back of their hand to wipe off the mucus. As the white people were keeping on asking the name of the continent, the old lady was also trying to understand what the white people were still saying. So in that confusion, the old man was saying to the woman, they are saying, can you please wipe off your mucus? So in Shona, the old lady was responding, Africa, Africa. Africa is saying, I've managed to blow off my nose, so I do not have any mucus anymore. So from that protest of the old lady saying Africa, as in, I have managed to blow off the nose, that is the white people thought that was the name of the continent. So it is a name that is being linked to the wiping off or to the blowing off of people's noses. And it is something that is quite disgusting. So we are linking the origins of the name of the continent with something as disgusting as someone wiping off their hand with their mucus with the back of their hand. And as we can all imagine, it is not something that we can derive pride over. The second line of jokes that try to explain the origins of the name Africa is to do with a fruit called mutowe. In English, it's called the snot apple. As I said, the question of snot keeps on appearing. It appears to be a motif in these kind of jokes. So we are taking the fruit snot apple. For those who are familiar with it, it is not a fruit that is not easy on the eye, especially if you see someone eating it. But so as it turns out, in both cases, we are associating the name Africa with snot. So it is not a continent, or it is not something that we can derive pride on. And it is not something that we can easily use as a rallying point in our quest to defend ourselves against the onslaught of neocolonialism. Then the second theme that comes from these jokes is the apparent technological incompetence of African people. We know that one of the results of the colonial encounter was the introduction of Western technology. We had our own technology, but it was not, we cannot compare it with the kind of technology that the West has, and the kind of speed that technology is developing. And in Zimbabwe specifically, one's level of civilization, in quotes, one's level of education, or how modern or developed someone is seen through how they are able, through their technological competence. That is, we go to school to gain this ability to use the latest technology. And the people who cannot use these latest Western technologies, which are obviously seen as the benchmark, are referred to as people who are left behind. In our own vernacular, we characterize those people as vakasara. They are left behind, and they have to make a concerted effort to try to bridge or to close that technological gap. So naturally, the black people's apparent technological incompetence figures in these particular jokes. There is of particular interest is a line of jokes which try to engage how black people are so technologically inept that they cannot operate simple household gadgets. A case in point is the microwave, which people who are seen as upstarts in terms of technology are constructed using them as washing machines, using them as dryers for pens, and using them for cooking food that should not be cooked in the first place, food like fruits like oranges, for example. So we have got people who try to appear as if they can manipulate these technologies, but apparently doing so in an obviously wrong way, which try to construct the amount of effort that people need to make in terms of trying to close that technological gap. Then the last theme has to do with linguistic imperialism, whereby Shona and English are compared in terms of their expressive power. We know from our linguistics that every language have got the same expressive power. There is no language that is more powerful or dominant over the other in terms of their expressive power. And from that particular philosophical, ideological, linguistic ideological standpoint, the constitution of Zimbabwe actually has 16 languages that are spoken in the country, all as official language, which seems to highlight to us that they all have the same amount of expressive power. But Shona is seen as significantly more inferior to its English counterpart, and people would gain more status if they use English instead of Shona. And English is discursively constructed as a language of socio-economic mobility, that if you do not have high competence in English, then you will be going nowhere in society. So that is where the humor is constructing our languages as those as getting people nowhere and people having no business in speaking them. There's actually a particular doctor, a joke, which wonders why one would need to study Shona up to A level, as if they want to be witch doctors. So you can already imagine that we are saying that people have got no business trying to learn about these languages or gaining knowledge in our own local language. It is languages. It is actually English that people should be learning. And from that particular perspective, you find that people who are seen as having a high competence in English are seen as educated, are seen as automatically intelligent, and are seen as people who have got more social mobility than those who cannot speak the language. And people who cannot speak English, whose competence in the language is very low, are derided as people who are unintelligent, people who lack education, and the people who are headed nowhere in society. So people should invest more in trying to learn English than their own local languages. So if we cannot rally around our own indigenous languages, then the Pan-African imperative has got a very high risk of getting derailed, because it is quite impossible to rally to use the former colonized language as a learning point and getting anywhere with that particular language. So let me just probably end here and invite questions or any interventions, if at all there are. Any questions? And if I might quote the previous speaker, who was actually expressing their dismay at the lack of actually verbal interaction, that is, we cannot actually speak to each other. So anything? Thank you so much, Iara. I appreciate that, and Gabriel, much appreciated. So basically, that was my presentation. It's about the Pan-Africanist ideal cannot go anywhere if we are not proud of our own cultures, if we are not proud of our own black identity. And humor can provide this window in trying to tell us about people's attitudes towards their own identities. And just as a way of conclusion, let me just end by repeating what Apia and Kramel say, in that the Pan-Africanist ideal is in the doldrums, is dwindling. people do not want to identify themselves with the African culture. They want to assimilate into the culture of the former colonized. And if it continues like that, then it threatens the whole ideology or consciousness of Pan-Africanism in general. So that was my presentation. Okay. Right. So yes, Jabu, actually the point you are raising is the point that I am actually trying to make. And we know the assimilation policies of France, whereby the former colonies of Mali, be it Algeria, be it of France, adopted this assimilation